As was said, my name is Jean-Nicolas Bordelot. I am a PhD student with the Konrad Adenauer Research Chair in Empirical Democracy Studies at the University of Ottawa. I previously completed a master's degree in political science at the Université de Montréal and a bachelor's degree in political science and psychology at the Royal Military College of Canada. I have conducted research with the Centre for International Defence Policy at Queen's University, the Electoral Integrity Project at the Royal Military College of Canada, the Canada Research Chair in Electoral Democracy at the Université de Montréal, and more recently with the Centre for the Study of Democratic Citizenship at McGill University. I would like to highlight that I am a political scientist who studies human behavior, so my expertise is centered around the behaviors and attitudes of citizens in the face of threats to democracy and democratic institutions.
Wake up call.
This guy's garage. Like and subscribe.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'm going to direct my questions to Mr. Bordelot. In a July 2021 paper that you wrote for the Centre for International and Defence Policy entitled Securing Elections, a Comparative Assessment of Canada's Response to Foreign Interference, you rightly note that the Canadian government has the full liberty to decide whether or not to disclose interference. And that is precisely what other of our allies have done, including, as you note, the Foreign Influence Transparency Scheme public register established by Australia, which I'm going to ask you about shortly. But we also saw the United Kingdom, for example, last summer. The UK government, along with the MI5, when they became aware of a Beijing agent working within the UK Parliament, a letter was written to the Speaker of the House of Commons. That individual agent, Christine Lee, was named, as well as the members of Parliament that were influenced by Ms. Lee. CSIS has advised this government that when it comes to foreign interference, that the policy of government be grounded in sunlight and transparency. And yet we have seen absolutely no sunlight and no transparency. Indeed, all of the troubling revelations about a vast campaign of interference by Beijing in the 2019 and 2021 elections have only come to light as a result of whistleblowers and reputable journalists. Do you find it troubling that the government kept Canadians in the dark over what clearly was some very concerning issues relating to interference by Beijing? And contrast that to how some of our allies have approached this in contrast.
Thank you for the question. I would say that it shows a weakness in the current policies regarding the critical election incident public protocol and a need to perhaps improve and clarify the threshold under which information regarding active attempts of foreign interference in Canadian elections need to be made public. I think something that is important to highlight from our Five Eyes partners, notably Australia, is that they exercise something called controlled transparency, which is transparency when it comes to information that is unambiguous, that is verifiable, and that has been verified by intelligence agencies, and in the case of Australia, the Electoral Integrity Task Force. And so the information that is made public in those countries it does not concern active investigations or does not concern any potential threats to elections. They concern active threats that have been verified and that are being made public because they're unambiguous. And so I think that's something that needs to be perhaps incorporated within the Canadian policy, election security policy, and within this threshold of information, which currently is somewhat unknown and up to a select few individuals to decide upon. And so I think that there's certainly work that can be done in this policy area.
Right, and in the case of Australia, that is made public through the Foreign Influence Transparency Scheme public register. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I think it's a website that you can. Well, it is a website that you can actively consult, and even as a Canadian, you can go on the website and see listed events of foreign interference on there.
Well, and building upon what you said with respect to the critical election incident public protocol, in the same paper that I referenced from July of 2021, you said that there's just too much discretion to the government when it comes to reporting interference. When I posed and other members posed questions to two members of the election task force about what the threshold is, they had a real challenge explaining what the threshold is. Do you think the threshold is too vague? Is it too high? How could it be fixed?
Well, I think certainly there needs to be a clarification as to what the threshold is, and there needs to be also it needs to be made a bit stricter, in my opinion. It needs to be clear that once information reaches certain elements, which we can certainly discuss, I think the unambiguity aspect is certainly an important factor that would be on that threshold. It needs to have been a foreign interference event. And then once this threshold is met, I think it should be automatic that the information be made available on a sort of registry like Australia, on a website or through a press release of some sort.
And pursuant to the cabinet directive, it is the threshold that is described is that there are incidents or an incident that threatens Canada's ability to have a free and fair election. That seems like a very, very high threshold. Would you think it would be appropriate, for example, that the public be made known when there's interference happening in one riding, perhaps? That might not threaten Canada's ability to have a free and fair election, but it certainly is a major concern, especially if you happen to live in that riding.
Well, I think certainly, but I think there also needs to be parameters. I think the vague mandate also comes with its downsides in that, yes, in the event that information is shared, there needs to be controls, and it needs to be controlled transparency. I think that's important. Unverified information in the hands of the general public can be extremely damageable and damaging. And I think that this is why I think Australia adopted a very neat model in saying this information needs to be verified by a series of agencies. And once everyone signs off and it meets the threshold, we can publish it online.